I'm here with several of my colleagues as well. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet a few of us. Matt and Sean in the back there, representing some of the business development group. Heather Goff up front here, preeminent deliverability strategist in the industry. We're all super excited to be back here, and I certainly hope that we are back again. So I am going to talk about Generation Z and email. Gen Z, if you don't know, is the largest generation globally. So bigger than the millennial population in that generation. And they age from, their age range is between 6 and 21 right now. So not all of them are eligible for email from us at this point. But many of them are, and they will be moving into that age quickly. Between myself and my team over the past month, we have had no fewer than 5 major marketers ask the question, not, how do I make email content more relevant for Gen Z, but rather, is email relevant for Gen Z? Which is a pretty big nuanced question there, right? When you're talking about, is email even relevant here? So what I've done, I've compiled some primary research from a bunch of different sources. So a shout out to SendGrid, Bluecore, CMO.com, Google, Forbes. Thank you all for supplying some of the information that I'm using here today. I'm serving as the connective tissue, hopefully, pulling some of the best of those insights and then transforming it into, so what? What does that mean for me as an email marketer? What do I need to know and think about as it relates to how I'm either communicating today to this large population or will be before too long, okay? So that's our topic here today. I do want to just spend a moment, if you're not familiar with Responsis, I'm just going to take a moment here. Responsis is a part of the Oracle Marketing Cloud stack. It is typically used by B2C marketers who are interested in personalized cross-channel communication at scale. We've been doing this for years and years for some of the world's largest marketers who are pushing out push, SMS, email, display, some off-channel in a very coordinated, orchestrated capacity. And really, our goal is your goal as marketers. We're focused on an optimized customer experience. We want to acquire better customers. We want to retain those customers. We want to increase their loyalty, do it in an easy-to-use platform using adaptive intelligence, multivariate testing to generate the best business outcomes possible for us. And that can be accomplished through Responsis. So I'm going to tell you a little story here this morning. And it starts with my son. He's 12. So he is in the midst of the Gen Z cohort as a generation. This is him sitting on the couch. He's looking at an iPhone. Now, if you know anything about 12-year-old boys, you'd have a pretty good guess, maybe, of what he's doing on his iPhone. And one of those guesses might be he's watching YouTube videos. Because if you're not familiar with Gen Z and YouTube, they, like 70 to 75% watch 2 hours of YouTube videos a day. 2 hours a day, okay? That would be a great guess, but not the right answer here. Okay. You might guess he's at the end of like a 12-hour Fortnite bender, right? If you're not familiar with Fortnite, you will be at some point. And there's probably some weird Venn diagram between watching Fortnite videos on YouTube that would just break the internet when it comes to numbers here. But Fortnite is not the right answer either. So the right answer is he was creating a live stream cat cam, because we adopted kittens this summer, and we were going away for the first time over Thanksgiving. And he wanted to live stream the hijinks that might be happening back home when we were away. And do not worry, I'm not showing you highlights from the cat cam here today. But, wow, disappointing the audience already. Wow, ooh, this is not going well. The point of this is the first really, truly digitally native audience that we have, right? They're born in the late 90s, so they've grown up only knowing internet, connectivity, right? They know HD, they know touchscreens, smartphones, right? Like, that is all they know. And that has big implications for us as marketers. They have certain expectations as it relates to interacting with devices, with communicating to one another and being communicated to, living in this type of advanced technological world from day one. So there are pretty big implications for us as marketers that we need to be dialed into as it relates to Gen Z and their experience. All right, so that's it for the cat. So those who are interested in that, this is your last chance, quick peek. Here we go. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the detail here. So as I mentioned, globally the largest population, 26% of the global population is in Gen Z. Now they're not the largest population in the US. That is still held by the millennials, but it's just by a small amount, so not far off there. They have big spending power or influence in spending power. We're talking billions with a B of dollars, right? So again, if your attention has not been reached yet, it should be. Spend a lot of time online. I mentioned the YouTube videos earlier. Almost half spend about 3 hours a day online. They're twice as likely to want to shop online as their millennial cohorts, right? So you start to just see even differences with millennials there. 67% use their smartphone as their primary email device. So you'll start to see a theme of just the mobile, and I'm not talking about iPads. It's the smartphone that's really key. 85% use email at least monthly. We'll get back to the monthly term here momentarily for receiving emails either personally or from marketers. So monthly, if you are a marketer who mails daily, doesn't really make you feel the warm and fuzzies, right? Checking in once a month on email. But you start to see some other numbers that indicate, I think, some positive tailwinds here. One of those is 83% of Gen Z believes that their use of email will either be the same or increase over the next 5 years. And that's higher than Gen X, that's higher than their millennial brethren there. 68% deem email essential for companies to send advertisements. And I think most interestingly, they view email as a more lasting, important, if you will, substantive type of communication compared to social, for example, which are seen as more fleeting, a little bit lighter types of communication. So as email marketers, there's a certain amount of gravitas, right, associated with our messaging in Generation Z's mind. Not to bury the headline, but ultimately it comes down to this, right? Like, how do they want to be messaged? How do they want to be messaged to? What do they want from a brand that they're engaging with? And 2/3 prefer email as that channel, right? So this is some of the positive indicators, I think, for us as email marketers. All of the other channels off to the side, predominantly social ones, much smaller fractions here. So email really key and important as it relates to their preferred way to engage with the brand. All right, what else do we know about them? I mentioned phones, most used devices, 3 or more hours a day on them. So super important for us to keep that in mind. That's followed by laptops and then televisions. Obviously a lot of screen time taking place regardless here. And they use these phones to make purchases. So we saw a little bit of that data earlier, but if you look at teens in particular, 53% say that they mostly use smartphones for purchases. Now, this is important because if they're clicking through on an email to a website, that experience on a mobile phone to convert, and that's not always optimized, I will say, even from recent personal experience, is really critical. And that's where we as email marketers have the baton handoff, and we're reliant upon that site experience to be seamless and to be able to be done via a smartphone. Some of the other cohorts here start to spill into the millennials, but smaller in general. So you start to see this generation that is very interested in conducting everything on their smartphone. Also interesting to us is their heavily most favored nation status with Gmail. 70% of this audience prefers Gmail. That is massive. And 73% of that 70% are dialed into the promotions tab, which is good. That's where most of our emails end up, although recently that's been a little quirk. Millennials, 61%, and then it drops off pretty dramatically with Gen X and baby boomers. 70% is pretty big. So if Gmail, or when Gmail and Google change that customer experience as it relates to this generation, that's big. And this should continue to be, the Gmail domain, a large and growing percentage part of almost everyone's file here. So interesting to keep tabs on Gmail, obviously, if you weren't already. All right, so we've learned a lot about stats and trends and so forth. What does this mean for us as email marketers? How do we go about looking at this? So I've got a few tactics here that I think are useful for us to keep in mind as it relates to communicating with them. And the first one here is talking about looking at developing a story and looking at even serialized types of messaging and communications ultimately. This is a generation that's not necessarily into tradition, and I think the story dimension of pushing this across channels is a compelling way to engage with them. Clearly a generation that is used to multitasking from day one. The importance of catching that attention visually is really, I think it's a really critical one too. Bright colors, I think this plays well into a live clicker, a movable ink type of technologies, right, that have a built-in dimension of high engagement there. Think about the experience. This is similar with the millennial generation, very focused on the experience side of the house. And this little bullet here is probably worth an entire session itself. Think about what email may be like using AR goggles, right? If I'm actually looking at my phone and there's an AR dimension to an email, that's built on AR, right? I could really change how we're designing and thinking about email. Obviously, dimensions of interactivity. Think about voice assistants, and if Alexa or Siri is reading the email and it's largely visually designed, how does that render? How do we track those types of metrics, right? Real interesting implications, I think, here, but that overall experience, leveraging video, right, really important here. No surprise, be quick. This is, I think, a universal recommendation in general, get to the point, and certainly holds true with Gen Z. Be a part of their narrative. They can smell fake from a mile away, so authenticity is really important, and leveraging influencers that are important to them, focusing on user-generated content that may come from them or their peers, I think is a great way to engage this audience. Mobile first, right? You had me at hello with this, but even more so, even more critical and more true for Gen Z. And then finally, let's leverage some of this direct feedback. Let's look at the videos that they are watching. Let's look at the content that they're clicking on and feed that back into subsequent types of messaging for them, ultimately, so that that next message, that next touch is that much more engaging. Okay? So these are some of the tactics I think that are most relevant. Let's look at some examples from some brands. And I'm going to pull up 3 different brands here. I'm not necessarily saying that these brands are targeting Gen Z so much as they are representations, I think, of some of these tactics that would appeal to that audience, right? So I'm going to start actually with Warby Parker. So Warby Parker, you can get a sense with this email. There is a animation dimension that's not reflected here, but the confetti that falls, very mobile friendly, actually has a cross-channel connection and serialized dimension to it from email to social here. Very nice, clean, sort of playful content here. Similar with these, I think strikingly designed, stand out in the inbox as a function of that. Also will have a dimension of influencers, bloggers, user-generated content, ultimately that are good examples here. Nintendo Switch, a little bit better overlap, I think, with the Gen Z audience. Clearly a strong visual dimension. If you weren't awake already this morning and this popped in your inbox, you would be. There are a couple of example types of emails here. There's a post-game purchase on the left, the new product launch on the right. See, one of them has some video dimension associated with it, right? No surprise there about about what the new game is. There's a dimension within the post-game purchase that talks about trying to engage with the platform across their friends. So I think some good examples here. Then finally, this is one from Charlotte Roos. Very mobile-friendly design, clearly plugs into the social dimension and does so in an interesting order that I'm sure is not random, with Instagram being the lead. That is the preferred social platform for Gen Z. So it starts with that, and then as you scroll down, the email moves into Facebook and Pinterest here. Very mobile friendly, also pushing user-generated content as a dimension here. So again, just some examples, I think, of how some of those tactics can be represented in actual emails. So I'm going to wrap up here today with just a quick recap. Gen Z can't be ignored, right? Largest population globally, 26% overall, important for all of us. Email's still a thing. We will be back for number 14 next year, right? I don't think this is a generation that's going to put us out of business. Cat cams, don't recommend it, not a thing. If you're celebrating holidays coming up, don't bother with that. Gen Z does make it a little bit easier with their overwhelming use of Gmail, right? And particularly as they become a larger part of your file, that reduces I think some of the dimensions associated with complexity of a diverse base. Focus on some of those tactics, right? Associated with in ways to engage them. So we walked through those 6 or 7 different approaches. And then finally, I think for each of you, it's important to understand how this generation will age into your file. So if you're AARP, you've got a 20 or 30 year wait yet ahead of you, right? Not as applicable. But for, I think, the vast majority of marketers in the room, it's a pretty material shift coming into your file that's important to be dialed into, cognizant of, and attentive to. So I appreciate your time today. It's been a great several days for us here, and happy holidays coming up.
Thanks, Clint. So as Clint mentioned, a nice representation from his team here from Oracle. Raise your hands again if you're from the team again. Yep. Wait, I said nice representation. You're one person. I know there's more of you. They're back there. Okay, there you are. Come on. So if you have questions from what Clint just presented and what Oracle's up to these days, please grab these guys and please learn a little more. I think we're going to move into the next session now, or do you want to take 5, Steve? You want to start now? Okay. No bathrooms for any of you. You'll sit. There will be a break coming up. All right, Steve Smith, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3. And today we finally get the snow as we're trying to leave. So good luck with that. And I know that a lot of you will be have a lot of flights throughout the morning. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here, all of your input, the Q&A, all of you who came on stage and spoke. I hope that you all had a good time. I hope that it was edifying. Also, as always, I'm always looking for input. I want to hear from all of you about where this conversation heads next time, the kinds of cases and companies you want to hear from. It's my job to go after them and bring them here and to try to set up an agenda that really gives you something back. And I'd love to hear your ideas, because a lot of what you saw here on stage were really coming from marketers who have been here many times before. Also, special thanks to all of our sponsors. A quick editorial note about sponsorship of MediaPost events, because I think it's really important. We don't do pay-to-play here. When I put together my schedule, I know all of our sponsors. I talk to them. I get all of their input about what's going on in the market, and I learn a lot from them, as you do too. But we're very church and state here. The 4 hours that we have in the morning here, that's the editorial well, is all brands talking to brands. We don't, and that's important. And the fact that our sponsors support that, that they know when they support our events, they're supporting independent journalism and peer-to-peer exchanges, I think is important in this day and age. And I have a special thanks for all of them. So today we're going to round out today by talking about overall experience. and a lot more about the technology that's driving that overall experience, as well as the content. And we're going to start with American Express. I want to ask Brian to come on up. Brian Coleman. Brian is, his title is self-explanatory. He's the Vice President of Small Business and Customer Loyalty Marketing at American Express. Here, why don't you grab a seat?
Here?
Actually, go over there, so we're in the center. And grab that mic,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Those of you may remember who were here the first day. American Express and the campaign, in fact, that we're going to be talking a bit about, won multiple awards, so congratulations. And I knew nothing about that, by the way. I was as surprised as you were when I saw that. I knew we were going to talk about this today, and there we go. Because in fact, when I spoke to Brian about what we might talk about together, because I'm a longtime customer of yours.
Thank you.
I see your email marketing. I see the ways in which you relate to customers. And I've always been impressed. And I wanted to drill into something. And as we were talking about the palette of things that you work on, this program in particular that we're going to talk about really stood out. I think it checks off a lot of important boxes for marketers. But let me back up a little bit and tell us a little about your overall role at Amex and the part of the company and the part of the clientele that you're focused on.
Sure thing. Firstly, very excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I have been with American Express for about 9 years now, and have a long history in digital marketing, but am new to email marketing, actually. So as I represent our program today on stage, I'm still learning about it as well. But I have close partners here with me today. My team, Jenna and Marissa, are here. Ergo is here. They're going to be talking a little bit later. We have a very close partnership with them and also with Movable Ink. So they can fill any gaps in that I leave behind after this conversation. I am responsible for customer marketing for the small business segment. So I work within the Global Commercial Group, which was responsible for providing payments and financing solutions to businesses of all sizes. And then for the small segment that I'm responsible for, I am responsible for everything post-sale of a new account or a new relationship. So we're responsible for onboarding new customers, teaching them about the various values and benefits of their product, and then I'm responsible for growing and retaining relationships. And I do that across a variety of programs. Email is a very important program, but I'm responsible for our phone-based servicing programs as well. And we do a whole bunch of marketing through a variety of channels.
Well, that's good, because I think I want to pull back from the email too and talk about how this fits within the larger messaging. But
Great.
all right, you're my card company. I'm getting emails from you all the time.
Yes.
I'm telling that my account's ready, my statement's ready, all of that. Because of that, what's the key challenge that you have in the email channel with your customers to maintain that relationship? Because to some degree, there's a kind of tedium that sets in. And in fact, you may have the opposite problem that a lot of other companies have, in the sense that we're so used to seeing you in our inboxes that we're not sure whether to even bother.
That's right. So I will tell you that email is a very popular channel among all of our colleagues. It is our largest scale outbound marketing channel. And so then it is very popular to use for a variety of purposes. So what we are doing is, and I think that we've made great progress here with our e-newsletter, is we're finding ways to have that asset serve a broader variety of purposes, but always with the customer being in the center, right? We always need to know what our customer needs and when they need it, and then be disciplined about what content we serve them through email marketing. And so sticking to the discipline can sometimes be the challenge.
Let's talk about, you did research in order to understand what would pop with your users and what would be relevant to put them at the center. Tell us a little about the research process that you went through to try to identify those elements.
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit about the small business customer just to set the context for my response to this question. So the small business customer is a very interesting customer. It really is a hybrid customer. I always have to answer the question, are you a B2B marketer or are you a B2C marketer? And the answer is both, because our customer really is an individual who operates a business and doesn't see a line between who they are as a person and who they are as a professional. What my observation has been is that the preferences of the segment are similar to consumer, but the expectation is even higher. They're even more time-starved than the average consumer. They have an even more precise understanding of the value of their time. And so what they need is they need to quickly see what value you bring to them. And so the work that we have done, or what we have learned, is that what works out well is giving them meaningful insights that can drive a strategic decision that they can make for their business. I can actually, because I haven't shown anything yet.
Yeah, let's look.
Let's look
let's,
at
let's
something.
show
Let's
what,
look-
what
let's look at
emails we're
something.
talking
Let's
about.
look at
here.
something, right? So this is a view of some of the content modules of our e-newsletter program. And I think the one that's interesting is actually the third from the left, right? So this is actually categorizing the areas of spend for a customer, right? So if you think about it, a customer might not really understand their cost profile. We all know that money is the lifeblood of any business. And managing money is really hard for a small business owner, especially someone that's newer to operating a business. We as a big corporation have lots and lots of people managing our money, but a business owner needs to do that. And if they can do that well and make strategic decisions quickly, they can move on to then running their core business. So here, in this data insights module, we're giving them a view on their cost profile. So like, did you actually know you're spending a lot on these, what you might not know, like these lower consideration purchases in general merchandise category? Maybe a business owner would decide to try to limit their expenses there so they could spend more on some core business services. So this content is performing extraordinarily well.
I think we should pull back to characterize this newsletter
Yeah.
and what you're doing here,
Sure.
because the actual content that's being driven here is truly personalized. It's coming out of their own account and their own spending habits.
Exactly.
You're showing their own behaviors
That's
back
right.
to them. That's
It's
the
making
idea
sense
here.
of their data. It's helping
Right.
them make sense of their data.
So
Right.
I'm getting a month. Is it monthly?
Yep, it's
I'm
monthly.
getting
That's
a
right.
monthly portrait of myself.
That's right.
Through the lens of my credit card use.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that there are a couple of things that I want to drill into here.
Sure.
How did you collect all of that data internally? Tell us that process. This is a lot of data modules we're talking about, and I want to go into that
Yeah.
piece too.
Yeah.
But internally, how did American Express gather all of these pieces of data? What was the challenge in breaking down the silos internally?
So obviously, we have access to an enormous data set, and so it can be an overwhelming undertaking. So my team, in partnership with Ergo, conducted some research to just ask some of our customers, what do you want? And they wanted more easily consumable insights about their cost profile, for example. And so then, after having that customer insight, then we go and look for the data that we need to bring that to life for them. And then we do some A/B testing to figure out what version of that is best.
Is that all fully centralized at Amex, or was that a process in and of itself to bring all that together?
That's a process. So we've made good progress in centralizing the right data sets. I know this has been a common conversation topic this week. My observation has been that I think this is really important. Sometimes marketers skip the first step of understanding why data is, or why systems and data are the way they are currently, right? So at a big company like ours, data is very important for many different purposes, right? For credit decisions, for fraud detection, and the teams responsible for those different activities have different needs in terms of access to data. There are obviously different data security requirements that are always top priority for us. And so I don't know what the future state looks like from a systems perspective, from a back-end system architecture standpoint. I can tell you from a marketing perspective, our ambition, and I think we're making good progress, but still have opportunity to do a lot more, is to have a totally unified experience on the front end from a customer standpoint, right? So we want to treat you, Steve, the same. We will always want to be able to anticipate your need and to know what you need and to treat you consistently across channels. So I will rely on my systems and data people to figure out the right back-end architecture for that. But my
how
team
many
and I
data points
has
are we
that as our
talking
vision.
about? And what sort of decision-making did you go through in determining how you would limit this? Because obviously, for someone who's spending through your card, there's a just massive number of data points that can be used. So tell me about how many data points we're talking about per customer and how you are making decisions about what's enough.
So I think the number that has been shared with me is that we're regularly using a few hundred data points, and I think we're always testing and experimenting. So that's not a static number. But in terms of some of the content that we're sharing to our customers, in terms of what performs best, that is using about 300 different data elements.
Okay. And it can be specific to different customers?
Yes.
Which ones you're
That's
using
right.
in?
That's
Because
right.
I want
I mean, because it's account information, truly every single E&L is, no two look the same, right? Because it is account-based data.
And are you dynamically changing those? Are you responding to how people are behaving and responding to modules so that you're essentially testing with every user?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, there's a good example of that. We tested some new marketing content around our employee card program this year. That is a valuable product feature for many of our customers, is to centralize all spending onto one account, and to do that for our larger small business customers that have employees that are purchasing on behalf of the business, to do that through an employee card. And so we ran some experiments earlier this year where we assessed interest by serving up some general content about employee cards, and then bringing the customer down the purchase funnel with more specifics. Then for customers who are actively enrolled in employee cards but not using them, we served content to reinforce the value proposition of using employee cards in terms of more efficient account management, opportunity to maximize rewards, et cetera.
Are you also prioritizing within the format too? Are modules
Yes.
shifting places so that you're as you're interacting with the email, as you're showing interest in different modules, they're actually changing you're changing the format?
That's
for
right.
your behaviors.
We do a lot of experimentation.
I guess I really want to underscore the importance of just generally what you're doing here. You're taking the customer and making them the hero of their own email.
Yep.
And you're taking data, and instead of simply leveraging it, you are actually showing it back to them, giving them a portrait of themselves, making them the star of the email itself, which I think is a really important point.
Yeah.
And we've heard some others here over the last few days who are doing something like that, or at least contemplating moving in that direction, because it checks off a whole bunch of problems and boxes about privacy, about what the value is of the data that a company is collecting on you, and essentially you are showing them the value that you can give them by the data that you're collecting, and that is so rare now. We're collecting data and we're not using it, or we're collecting data and nobody knows why the hell we have it.
Sure.
So and I'm curious, what do you get from your customers about this? What do you hear back from them?
So we hear some qualitative feedback. We have a quote here about the value that the e-newsletter brought to them. So they actually, one of the modules we run is around recurring subscription charges. And we all, even as consumers, right, have a lot of recurring charges that we kind of set and forget about. Right. And so in this instance, a customer saw that their subscription fee increased dramatically, so they could take action based on that. And then from in terms of a quantitative perspective, one data point that I find very interesting, and you actually asked us, based on our prep session, I went to find this information with Marissa. How often do people go back to the email?
Yeah.
If they go back to the email, then they've got to be happy with it, right? So the interesting data point there is that we actually looked at 3 or more visits to the email, to a particular email. Because 2 or more could be accidental, right? 3 or more. So 51% of our customers come back to their email 3 or more times.
And the content is real time.
The
so
content
it's
is real time.
I mean, that's why I asked the questions, because I'm always curious about this. I hear about these programs often that are real-time refresh data every time they open the email. It repopulates. But I don't know if that's a behavior that email users are really up for, or whether they use. But your data suggests that people know that that when they're opening this email, they're actually almost like opening their personal account on the web. They're actually getting refreshed in live data.
That's right. And we do timestamp the content, which does a couple things. It makes sure that we're obviously transparent with our customer of the vintage of the data, but it also says the data is fresh.
Exactly. We need to communicate that capability.
That's right.
It's a simple thing, but without it, nobody really knows.
Exactly.
That's not how we're used. So I want to drill into some of the pieces of the execution of this great idea. First of all, is yes, we have the data. It's a great idea. Make somebody the hero of their data, of their email. Show them the data back. But then that raises the question of, how do you present data?
Yeah.
So you've got all of this, you have all of these raw stats about someone, but still finding the way to communicate that in an effective way, especially visually, I think is a real challenge here when you take on this idea.
So I'm going to go back to the segment insight first, which is business owners have a very high standard for the value of their time, right? And so what that means is they're going to open up any piece of content, including an email content, and they're going to decide in a second or two, am I going to spend my time with this or not, right? And so I do not have a design background. We have a great team at Ergo that helps us with that. But the purpose of design is to quickly demonstrate the value of the content of the email. And so that's what we work with our team to do.
So what form does that usually take? In terms of visually,
so
what are the ways that the data translates best?
Right, so it's obviously very visual, infographic, bar charts do very well, complemented with select usage of imagery, trackers, et cetera. And all that content performs very well.
Now, you told me, you gave me a number of how many content modules are involved here.
We have many, hundreds. So most of our customers, it varies, but we'll see 6 to 8 modules, and each module has many different versions. So when you run the combinations math on that, it becomes many pretty quickly, right?
But there are literally hundreds of possible ones, but each customer probably is seeing 5 or 6?
5 or 6 modules. But then within each module, obviously, the content is different.
An interesting question that's come up over the last few days is personalization fatigue. And whether you see that. Is that these emails, as personalized and compelling as they are, over time they may become rote, they may become boring. What sort of fatigue do you see, and how do you deal with it?
So this is what's most important when we make decisions about personalization. The success metric, or the measure of success, there's not one metric. The measure of success is that a customer experiences our marketing, in this case the e-newsletter, and they're able to make a better strategic decision about their business because of that content. And so that's what informs all of our decisions, right? We don't like to personalize just for the sake of personalization, right? We like to do it with the purpose of achieving that end that I just described to you.
Well, let's then walk into the question of metrics. How are you measuring success? First, what sort of results are you seeing that are encouraging? And what do you consider the hard metrics of success for this?
So our product is interesting, right? Because with a credit product, you are making decisions whether to use it or not every single day, right? We all know that we have many options when we decide how we pay for things, not just credit cards, cash, check, a variety of options. And so what we do is we do have a rigorous measurement process where we hold out a small population and we don't treat them, in this case with the E&L, and then we look at the performance of that population in terms of their product usage versus those that do engage with the E&L. And we do see a substantial impact of those who are served with the E&L.
So the metric is raw spending. I mean, they're actually using the card more as they become more aware of their behaviors. Interesting. Which is almost counterintuitive, right? You would almost think that as someone is becoming more aware of their spending patterns, they actually would be maybe more disciplined about their spending, but instead they're actually increasing their use of the card. Or
those things are not necessarily in conflict, right? So I just made the point that we have many different options in terms of how we pay for things, right? So you could be reducing your overall spend if that's your business objective. You could reduce your overall spend, but put more of that spend on American Express because you're getting these valuable insights.
Right, you're able to see it on a single console. You're recognizing
strategic decisions about your business.
What were the missteps? I mean, I think Marissa actually asked this question the first day, and of course we had first panel is that we learned more about these things from what went wrong and how you course corrected.
I think so. We're very happy with the performance of the program. The opt-out rates are very low. The open rates and click-to-open rates are extremely high. So we're very happy with the performance of the program. That being said, I'm going to go back to the point I made on discipline, which is that we do a variety of email. I think this is common across many organizations. I've heard that from other brands over the course of the last couple days. And so I don't know if it's a misstep necessarily, but we do want to bring more of the discipline of our E&L to other email marketing programs. To make sure that the customer's always in the center.
And in this case, you have the advantage of it being, this is set in stone. It's a monthly, and it makes sense. There's a sense to this, of a monthly review. And you don't abuse the privilege, and you give it to them once a month, and that cadence makes sense.
That's right.
So now I want to pull back into that larger picture.
Yeah.
How have the learnings and the insights from this program informed and changed other aspects of your marketing? Now that you realize this and you have this somewhat different content relationship with your own user, and you're seeing them interact with the email, you're seeing their priorities. How does this impact the rest of it? Does this start reflecting out so it's seen elsewhere in their relationship with you?
Yeah. That's part of the fun part of my job, is I get to look across a variety of programs and channels, and it's really fun. The great thing about the e-newsletter is that we have the scale, so we can test quickly and then bring learnings and insights to other channels. So we're starting to have conversation about bringing some of this spend profile presentation data into our call center environment to offer up insights to customers when they call us for servicing.
Wow, that's interesting.
So yet to be achieved ambition. It's something that we're starting to talk about.
That's because I think that's sort of brand consistency. Where they get to learn, they can learn through email, having a certain relationship with the brand, and then that starts reflecting elsewhere in all their other touch points. That's fascinating. What are some of the biggest lessons from all of this in how to execute and where to keep things on course?
I'm going to go back to the discipline point. Not just in terms of how we email and when we email, but also about how we test, right? Like sometimes our eyes are bigger than our stomach. And so I think we need to continue to be very disciplined about having a question about what our customer needs, coming up with a structured test to help us answer that question, and to prioritize that over the thousands and thousands of tests that you could run. So we're always trying to keep ourselves disciplined.
Let me poke at the discipline question a little more, maybe get some examples. So in terms of, say, cadence and how much you're actually hitting, the brand is hitting someone over the course of the month, in addition to this monthly newsletter that's exceptional in its execution and its content and of high interest, what are you learning, or what are your policies and your disciplines about the rest of the month and the other kinds of email that's coming?
So we do, I will say, we do send a lot of servicing emails that are event-based, right? So if there's fraud detected on your account, there's a real-time servicing communication about that. So that is some of the volume that I don't see changing. That's a very important part of our service offering to our customers. When it comes to marketing emails, we will send email communications about other products and services that we offer with the intent of creating awareness, consideration, and ultimately purchase of those additional products and services. We are testing ways to bring that type of marketing into our e-newsletter program. So that we want to do some integration there.
How about the reverse? Because one of my questions that comes to mind is, as a hero email like this, newsletter like this, gains credibility and gains confidence and respect from your users. If you start seeing that then wash over your other emails, where you start seeing that they're simply more receptive generally to your overall communications.
I think that's true. I think that the next step for us is to find new ways to bring those two sets of content together into one experience.
Right.
So that's what we're
Or to find
having
ways
a lot
to
of
take
internal
modules
conversation
out of
about.
this or things out of this into the other marketing
That's
emails.
right.
So,
That's
so
right.
they're so that
Exactly.
they actually are connecting these. They're
That's right.
seeing the same voices talking to them with the same attitude towards
That's
the
right.
consumer. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have some time for questions? If any of you have questions of Brian? Anybody? I'm not seeing it. Well, let me follow up on the. Oh, there is? I'm sorry. Can we get a mic over there?
Chuck Davis from Webula. Because you're being so engaging in the inbox, are you being fished more? Because now that I'm used to opening and looking at Amex emails, it seems like I'd be an easier phishing target for somebody who looks like Amex to update my account information.
I have not heard that. I'm looking at Marissa there just to confirm that I'm right. But she's shaking her head no, confirming that I'm right, I think. Right? Okay. It's a good question.
You're using mobile examples here. Are most of these being opened on mobile? And is that then?
Do you know our mobile versus desktop mix, Marissa? 60 being mobile, 60% being mobile.
So understanding what modules are most important at the very top is especially critical.
Yep.
One last question about the technology. The
Sure.
backend technology.
Ooh, you're going to stump me finally.
No.
I've made it.
I don't.
I've made it like 25 minutes into this
Okay,
conversation
all right.
without being stumped yet.
Well, okay, but that's.
I knew you were going to get me.
Well, first of all, you're free to share or not who's actually doing this, who's managing 300 plus content modules in background and doing this live. And there have got to be serious choke points there. There have to be things that you have to get involved in to fix. What have been the learnings about making a technology that can work at this sophisticated real-time level?
Yeah, so we have a big team across both our internal team and our partner team. The hardest part, I think, is probably testing, right? To make sure all the content is as it should be. So we have a very robust testing process. And then keeping all of the data connections live is obviously requires a lot of rigor. And so where I get involved is to exert some influence to make sure that those connections stay live.
And those are connections that are coming from various parts of the company.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I mean, that coordination has got to be really complicated.
There's a lot of coordination.
Okay. Brian Coleman, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Congratulations
Steve.
on
Thank
a great
you.
idea.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I gave myself my own segue to our next panel, which is on the technology, and whether and again, an idea that actually came from one of our members from our last event, which is we know that the technology is supposed to drive greater personalization and automation, but one of the promises of a lot of the tech around email platforms and around MarTech generally is that it should free up marketers to be marketers. It should free them up to think more strategically and to work at a higher level on marketing strategy. And that's one of the questions we wanted to engage with this panel. With our old friend Kate Creamer, who's the manager of digital marketing at Make Music, Kate has also helped me immeasurably over in organizing this event and getting new people involved. But Kate at Make Music engages a lot of these questions about how the technology relates to strategy and whether the technology is really helping marketers be better marketers. Please welcome Kate in our final panel.
Hello. On? I'm on.
Are you on?
Am
Am I
Hello.
on? I'm on.
You're on.
We're good.
On.
We're in business. Strong start. Thank you, Steve. We really appreciate that this event has been awesome, and we appreciate you guys sticking around for day 3. I'm really excited that this is wrapping everything up because I think this ties together pretty much everything that we've been talking about for the past couple days. Segmentation, testing, data analysis, that stuff all kind of contributes profoundly to automation. And we really had a great time when we were planning this panel together, getting together and talking about different strategies and how we make automation work and what we really think the future of automation looks like. So to kick things off, I just want to do quick introductions, and then we'll keep it real casual. Like Steve said, I'm Kate Creamer. I'm with Make Music. I work for Finale and Smart Music. We do music education and music notation software. I manage the digital marketing team, and I'm also the biggest email geek on the team, by far. Morgan.
Wow, I don't know, that's a tough act to follow. So Morgan Shimmy, I oversee acquisition and retention marketing for the store on HP.com. So that's HP's direct-to-consumer business. And yeah, I'm very fortunate in being able to oversee the acquisition and the retention side. So a lot of infighting that might happen in other organizations, I'm able to quash pretty quickly and help get things done.
Neil Gogate from Mattel. I oversee, I'm the senior manager of CRM and acquisition marketing. I oversee all of the brands, so I'm sure many of you or your kids or your grandkids have either played with some of our toys, Fisher-Price, Barbie, Hot Wheels. I've heard a lot of groans about American Girl, so I'm sorry, and I also appreciate. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm in the market for a lot of your toys since I have three toddlers. Hot Wheels is a big one for us since I've got 3 boys. But my name's Luke Kintai. I'm the head of publishing for Intel IQ, and Intel IQ is our flagship content marketing platform. It's essentially a digital magazine that's focused on IT decision makers and senior level engineers, and we're really looking, our publication is not necessarily looking at where Intel's business is today, it's more where it's going tomorrow, so you'll see a lot of content about artificial intelligence, 5G, autonomous driving, and it's pretty nerdy, so if you want to check it out, you can, but probably, honestly, a lot of you guys are, unless you're senior level engineers, are probably not in our wheelhouse for our target, so.
Luke, you mentioned what things look like today. Quick high-level overview. What does automation look like for your respective companies today?
Yeah. Yeah, so today, I mean, we're using a ton of automation, obviously in email, but, you know, I think what we're trying to figure out is how do you connect all the dots together, right, with automation. So, you know, we do a lot of personalized email based on content consumption and behaviors. And then on site, we're using, you know, content recommendation widgets. We're starting to use, you know, personalized experiences based on, you know, previous, you know, where they previously have been within the Intel ecosystem. So for our program, it's probably a little bit unique where we're very top funnel. We're not really talking a lot about product. We're actually trying to feature our people versus the product. However, if someone had been to an Intel.com product page that was looking at, you know, an actual like product spec, if they then go to IQ, we are, you know, then trying to tie the data together to then surface up, you know, with almost like a banner ad type of execution, like inside the content that will then, you know, target them back to that type of content. So, yeah, so we're a lot of ways similar to like retailers, where if you're on a site, you're looking at a product, you go to CNN.com, you know, of course, all of a sudden you're seeing that shoe you just shopped for. So we're trying to kind of implement a similar execution where, you know, if we know that they've been somewhere else in the Intel ecosystem, which is pretty large, that we're tying that experience together. So that's a big one for us.
Morgan, you're running into some parallels there at HP too. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really challenging factor that we have. Luke's in a great position in the fact that they're able to create a lot of kind of best-in-class content. I think one of the biggest struggles that we currently face is we've kind of got distinct sets of users, HP being a printing company and a PC company. You know, there's a subsection of our user base that's, you know, they're using their PCs at home, at the office, and so the content that we're serving them is very different than the content that we're serving businesses who are printing. As we move into 3D printing, that brings a whole nother level of content that we need to create. And then there's you know, smaller businesses that are doing photo printing, canvas printing, so on and so forth. And so one of the biggest challenges that we have, you know, I think a lot of big brands, there's specific brand standards that need to be met. And so creating content that's reflective of your brand and your brand standards and doing it at scale to make automation work is really challenging. The amount of permutations that you require to have good automation and good personalized communication, it's really, really expensive. And it's tough because an investment in content is an investment that'll pay itself off in perpetuity, but you know, a lot of us don't report business results on a 5-year view, we report it on a quarterly view, and making an investment in today where the payout's going to take place over multiple years in the form of content and engagement and LTV is challenging because there's a lot of focus on first order profitability and how are we getting them in the door, what's making them buy right now, and so the investment in content to enable better automation and better personalization is it's a struggle, and I think it's probably a struggle that a lot of larger brands have. So.
I like that you touched on brand specificity, and Neil, I would love to have you speak to this because you have so many brands.
Yes, we do. I think the challenge for us at Mattel is that we're really looking generally at digital as a new frontier for us. Mattel has been a company for over 70 years, and our bread and butter has always been doing marketing through TV, through print. How many of you watched Saturday morning cartoons and saw the commercials and immediately nagged your parents and said, "Oh, I want that Barbie," or "I want this"? It's been digital for us has been something that we've been very slow to adopt, and I think we are starting to make some right moves over the past couple of years. Where that causes some complications, though, is that we've always allowed our brands to focus very singularly. So Barbie operates on its own, Hot Wheels operates on its own, Fisher-Price operates on its own. From my perspective, though, I'm looking at it more from an enterprise level. And so really trying to figure out how do we build that proper consumer life cycle. And for us, the consumer is actually the child. The person we really want to try to market to is the shopper, the parent, the grandparent, the aunt, the uncle. What we're trying to do, though, is we want to connect all of our brands together because we have an opportunity to really take a parent and child from a brand like Fisher-Price, allow us to introduce them to a brand like Thomas the Train, go to Barbie, to Hot Wheels, to Matchbox, to American Girl. It's an interesting challenge that we're facing, and we're starting to get a lot more buy-in from our brand partners as well to understand how we can really do that one-to-one communication to really personalize the content, make it more relevant to them, and also showcase the wealth of content and the products that our brands have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you touched on scalability. That's something that I know we've really struggled with at Make Music because we have such a small team and we have different brands. And so getting stakeholder buy-in has been really important for us because without that data being aligned, we're not going to get anywhere anytime fast. So I'd like to hear you speak a little bit more about, getting that buy-in and how do you overcome that initial hurdle, and then once you have the buy-in, where do you go next?
Yeah, I think we've finally there's been a big divide between what the business wants and what the IT organization wanted, and so I think over the last 2 years we've really gotten some good alignment on both sides to understand what we need from an organization to really drive this thing forward. And think getting that IT leadership support, getting our senior leadership support, and getting the businesses to buy into this has been really critical. I think the next step for us is really trying to piece all this together. We've onboarded with Adobe Campaign, and we're pulling in some of the other parts of their stack to really help us really synthesize this data in a way to make it more meaningful to us. We spent a lot of time having very siloed data in 15, 16 different databases, and it's not functional, it's not worthwhile for anybody, and so bringing all these pieces together, getting leadership alignment, getting the teams to support this not only with budget and resources has been a big key in starting to drive some of the automation forward.
Definitely. Luke, you mentioned content a little bit earlier, and I really liked what you had to say about kind of getting evergreen content versus getting brand new content and using that with your data so you're not really stretching yourself super thin on all fronts. Right. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so we have a luxury of we create about 30 to 40 pieces of original content a month that's long form in nature, so it'll have anywhere from 800 to 1,000 words, multiple images, videos, etc. So it's pretty robust in terms of the way we present out the information. It's very dynamic. So what we've learned over several years really is how do you take a piece of content like that and really deconstruct it in a way to get like maximum usage out of it. So we will basically, before we actually lay out the article, we'll look at the assets and say, okay, how do we build this image for our Instagram channel, or how do we take this pull quote and make a really compelling, make that a social copy that we can put throughout our social channels. So yeah, so I think we're looking at our long form content in particular as a way to deconstruct it, so you're getting it's manifesting in 10, 12 different social ads or ad units, and it's living across all those different channels. And of course, it all kind of invariably the CTA, when you interact with that content in the ecosystem, you're coming back to that original piece of content for further engagement. But I think one kind of best practice that we've learned, we don't do a lot of like list posts, or is also known as listicles, which I don't like that word, so I go with the list-based post. But yeah, I think a great way to leverage that type of content is you actually look into the individual items in that list as its own article in itself. So how do you look at, if you have 3 personas you're targeting, how do you look at those images and that copy as maybe very specific to different personas and segments? So yeah, I think it takes a lot of like proactive thinking around when you're building out the content, instead of saying like, okay, we published it, and where's it going to go? It's going to go here. Really thinking about where is that content going to travel, and how is it natively going to live in those spaces and channels.
How are you using data to inform who sees what?
Yeah, we, in terms of distribution, we have pretty flexible, we would call kind of like we've moved from a fixed to more of a flexible approach, where we're creating a lot of content, right? So we're putting every piece of content out into market in some way or another, but invariably what we've learned is that a small percentage of that content will actually perform. So it's anywhere typically between about 10 to 20% of your content will drive up to about 90% of your engagement if you optimize it towards your KPIs. And there's like variables, right? Depending on your business model and your audiences, that could vary. But for us, that's pretty much the truth. So for our distribution strategy, it all kind of comes down to how do you find those winners that work hard for you and double down on that. So kind of a Moneyball approach of you shift away your investments to the content that's not performing and pour that back into what is working. So that's been a big learning for us.
I love that. I think that totally speaks to the iterative approach that everybody's been talking about this week, talking about content modules in emails, and then taking a look, saying, okay, we're going to try this, we'll test it, and then see what works from there. I think that's really important. Automation it's so easy to set it and forget it if it continues running on its own, but it's such a missed opportunity. If you've got something that you can constantly test, why wouldn't you be constantly testing it? I'd like to hear more about that from you, Morgan, because I know you had a kind of a different take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, there's, it's interesting. Part of testing is there's 2 different pieces, right? It's the content itself, and then it's the ad tech behind it, or the stack behind it. We're very fortunate in that we leverage Adobe and Salesforce pretty extensively for the vast majority of what we do. And while they're kind of closed walls in some capacity, what it allows us to do in particular is to partner with other brands, leveraging first, second, and third-party data. And so, for example, with Intel, we have the capability of looking at people, for example, who have been on Intel IQ, and looked at gaming content, for example. Yeah. And then when they come into the store homepage on HP.com, we know that they've been to Intel. We know specifically what they've looked at on Intel.com. And we can serve a very personalized experience as a result of that. So being able to go ahead and test that versus what our control experience would be if we didn't have that data, and just show them a simple homepage, or even when there's a specific aspect of the site that's called Tech Takes. And so that's similar to what you guys are creating. We're pushing out about 1 article a day, video, images, long-form content, short-form content, et cetera. But even when people come into that section of the site based on other areas of our site that they visited, or potentially areas of Intel that they visited, we're able to go ahead and serve appropriate content. And that even extends beyond the owned experience. If we look at the marketing assets that we're putting out there, display collateral that these individuals are going to see, being able to use second-party data through the Adobe stack, where we're able to share audiences pretty easily, barring any legal restrictions. It allows us to go ahead and test that creative against our standard creative that we might target a gaming audience with. And so I think, if people in the room think about who their bigger partners are, is there an opportunity to go ahead and share data? And then the other piece, going back to, I mentioned earlier on about, the cost of creating assets. is there an opportunity to share assets? Obviously, brand alignment with, Intel powers a lot of what we do. And so what they're saying to their end customers about the processing power of an Intel i7 chip, what he's saying on his site, I could very, very easily leverage on my site. And so that's one less asset that I have to go and create. And instead I can take those dollars and create something else and still satisfy, the content requirements that I need to be pushing out on a daily basis. And so things like that, not just testing your own assets, but testing partner assets as well. Taking that kind of scrappy startup mindset, regardless of the size of your organization, and testing some things out. Hopefully that gets at what you're asking. So.
Absolutely. And what's cool about that, I think, is it speaks to what Brian said earlier about using what you have. So that's not only internally, that's also externally. Work with your partners, figure out what they can provide to you so you're not having to hustle 100% of the time for absolutely everything that you're putting together. Use what you have and see what works and test iteratively. You mentioned something earlier, this is kind of a diversion, but I was really interested in it when you were talking about personalization. Do you see a point of diminishing returns with how personal do we get with this? Does it get creepy, and do people react poorly to it when it does?
I think look, you could probably cut this room in half about people who think we're doing too much and people who think we're not doing enough. I think, forget who was speaking to it yesterday, but we're very much catering towards I don't want to say an entitled audience. I don't know if that's the appropriate way of thinking of it, but I think audience expectations have elevated over the last couple of years, and they know how much insight and data we have on them as consumers based upon interactions with our emails. With HP, obviously they're using our hardware, they're using our printers. We know how much they're printing. We know if they're printing in black and white. We know if they're using HP ink versus remanufactured, refilled ink. And so they know that we have all these insights, and I think they expect us as a brand, and I'm just using us, to deliver them relevant and engaging experiences. And I think if we're not doing that and we're treating, if you buy a brand new PC and I'm sending you content about what you should do about your old slow PC, obviously I'm not taking that content to light. I'm delivering information to you that's not relevant, and ultimately it's going to go to spam. It's going to effectively give you a poor brand experience, and I think we all want to avoid that. And so there probably is a level of personalization creepiness, but I don't think we're there yet. Certainly I don't think as a brand, I don't think HP's there. There might be other brands that are, but it's a fine line that you have to walk, honestly.
That wasn't a challenge, I assure you.
I find your messages to be kind of creepy, but that's just me. I think for us, it's very much the same. We're trying to find that balance between what is personalized and what's engaging and what's kind of over the edge. I think where we're at is we're really trying to look at segmentation as that first piece, trying to make sure we understand, the different consumer sets within our data, and then trying to make sure that we're providing value. So if you visit the Fisher-Price website and you've looked at a rocker, obviously, you don't have a baby who maybe is walking yet. So we want to make sure that we're providing content, products that are relevant to you, whether you're looking at it on the website or on the email, or even potentially through media and banner ads. So I think that's one of the places we're looking at, trying to start moving towards more personalization. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's constantly evolving for us.
I like that you bring up the point of understanding where customers are in their journey. I'd like to know from all three of you, how do you think automation can support better life cycle nurturing?
Yeah, one thing we've done is, one of my disciplines that I oversee and kind of try to drive is audience development, which is, basically a fancy word for user journey. But we've mapped out the different stages of our audience, what we want them to do once they've interacted with our content. Everything from what we call a flyby audience, which means that they've seen our piece of media, but they haven't been to our site, to a first-time reader, to a repeat reader, to an email subscriber, to a loyalist, which we qualify based on their level of engagement with email. So we have these kind of key stages that we look at of what we're trying to drive towards, and then what we've done is we originally started out with the editorial, how editorial would be different based on where they're at in that particular stage. And then we also looked at like KPIs, of course, they will change a little bit based on where they're at that stage. And then the last layer we've done recently is took our stack and said, okay, there's certain tools at Intel, this like HP, I'm sure has a massive tech stack, right? We've got, you know, I always joke our toolbox like won't shut because it's like too full, but it's a good problem to have, I guess. So there's certain tools in our stack, right, that are very good at like acquisition and looking at like real-time data. And then once you start to get down into email, right, you're looking at like more retention-based tools and looking at, you know, what kind of tools can deliver like real audience insights around demographics and, you know, who they exactly are, not like what they're doing. So yeah, that's been really helpful to share to stakeholders in particular, where they're like, wait, what is this tool? Like, how is it used? Or like, okay, this is like the use case for it, and this is how it ladders up to our overall strategy. So it's been helpful for our team internally, and then externally we can show a one-page slide and say, here's like really what our goals are, and here's how everything we do ladders to those different stages. So.
I think for us, you know, and I spoke to this a little bit earlier, we're trying to develop the general consumer life cycle and being able to bridge between the brands and move the consumer along, the shopper along in the journey. I think the challenge that, in particular in my role, you know, I'm always being asked, how do we bring in new consumers? How do we bring in new consumers? And it's always coming from a brand perspective. Part of this is also, you know, having them understand that there is a retention part of this, that we can spend less and execute our content better so that we do that bridge between a Fisher-Price and a Thomas, so that they're not actually a new consumer to the company. They are a new shopper, they're a new child, they're a new consumer of content for that brand, but we haven't actually spent any new money to bring that consumer in. So I think the challenge is, you know, trying to do those proper transitions. I made this comment yesterday, and, you know, we've been talking a lot about the crawl, walk, run. And, you know, for me, I think where we're at is we're the child that's just starting to turn over. So we're about that 6-month phase. But I think the challenge really is, and something we're starting to address, is how to bridge those gaps between the brands and how to make our brands understand that retention really is more than just, you know, providing good content. You know, it's really trying to understand what they're doing and where they're at in their consumer journey.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you guys made some really good points. We're doing similar things. I think the one piece, when you're dealing with so many different SKUs and, you know, like I alluded to before, we're doing 3D printing, we're doing large format printing, you know, the podiums that we have outside to these types of cards that we have here, photo printing on small Bluetooth-enabled printers. To really understand the content and the customer, I have a small team, we leverage agencies, we're never gonna know as much about that end consumer as the individual product manager, right? And so it's really about, you know, as much as the automation journey is about the consumer and, you know, what we serve up to the consumer, it's also about like us educating ourselves well on like what are the real KSPs for each of these individual products. Like, what's going to make a consumer print more on their Bluetooth printer? What's going to make them get better use out of it? What's going to get them to post images to Instagram that they took on this printer? What's going to get them to use the app more? And so I think part of it is educating our own internal talent, the product managers, is to look at all the stuff that we can do with automation. How should we do it? What types of assets do you think are going to resonate well? And then taking that and testing it out. And so, you know, I think for us, our automation journey is really kind of about that individual consumer, the products that they're using, and then effectively being able to deliver lifestyle tips, ways to encourage greater use of a specific printer in this instance. Or, you know, maybe there's a better business model than what they're doing right now. So we have a service, it's Instant Ink. It's a subscription-based service. If you're not printing a lot, you don't want a cartridge that's going to dry out because you haven't used it in 6 months. Mm-hmm. Maybe Instant Ink, where you're spending $2 or $3 a month and you're getting ink delivered on an ongoing basis. So how do we add value? It's not just about, you know, digging deep into the consumer's wallet. I think the example that American Express had, where they said their subscription model had increased by 2x or something along those lines as far as cost, and American Express noted that to them. We want to be able to provide value in that same capacity. And so I think, our automation and our journey is very much informed by kind of consumer actions and then our own internal stakeholders and what they bring to the table based on their knowledge of the consumer.
That's so important, and I love that you brought up kind of letting people internally know what you can do, because that's something that I run into all the time. We live in this world of we eat, sleep, and breathe email, and so we know that you can go through your database and say, okay, this person got these 5 emails on this day, they opened, they engaged this way. That blows people's minds on a regular basis. Like, people are so amazed by it, and so I think it's so important to internally kind of do like, a friend of mine has a term, like internal roadshows, where you can go around and say, hey, this is what we can do. Can you help us inform those decisions? So you're communicating across the company, and it's making that internal buy-in a lot easier, and you're reaching your customers in a more valuable way. So I want to wrap it up with one last question for the 3 of you. What are the first 1 or 2 easy wins that you would recommend for people who are looking to start with automation for the first time or make their automation a heck of a lot better?
Yeah. You want me to start?
Yeah?
Okay. No. Go.
Dig right in.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, going back to content, I'll speak to maybe the content side of it, because of course, like, A/B testing, all these tools, personalization, it's all great, but unless you have really compelling content, that's really what drives the boat. So what we've learned, and that's typically a lot of the problems. I mean, I know talking to other peers in the industry too, it's like, yeah, we've got all this like awesome tools, but like, man, we have such a hard time getting content, like the right content for it. Or you're trying to force fit like, content that's really not built for your audience or your email, and like trying to pretty much put lipstick on a pig. So what we did before, because we were actually kind of late to the game with email, we've only been doing email for about 2 years for IQ, so we're still, I think we're probably similar to your Qualbach one, yeah, turnover, yeah. But what's really helped us power our email and personalization is creating serialized content. So almost all the content we do is part of like a 3 to 4 to 5 part series, and it's kind of this repeatable format of, we introduce a really compelling topic, like, women in AI, like what are some like awesome women that are like doing groundbreaking stuff in the AI industry. So look, kind of explain the topic and then feature different women in the industry, and then kind of wrap it up with, post number 5 or 6. And so that's great for email because it's very like sequential. So it's great for retargeting too. That's the reason why we did it in the first place, was to do content sequencing. And then we're like, well, this works really well for email. So yeah, I think that would be one of my tips. And then just in terms of like understanding your audience, there's so many free tools out there that, whether it's Google Trends or Quora Q&A forums, there's a site called Answer the Public, which aggregates all the search data around particular terms and turns it into like top questions answered. So this is more from like ideation and production to feed your email, but there's a lot of free tools out there that will give you a pulse of what your audiences are searching for, what are they sharing, what are they reading, and that's great fodder to create content around because you're speaking directly to their needs. So, and it's good to get outside this like stakeholder checkbox mantra that a lot of us are in, where it's like, oh, I need content with like these 5 things, and make sure to mention this feature, and that's of course important to bake it into your content, but this kind of like is able to empower you with data to say, okay, that's great, but here's the reality of the customer, and here's what they're searching for, here's what they're sharing. So yeah, and I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to learn more about using some of those tools, because again, they're free, they're pretty easy to use, and they're a great asset to what we do.
That's great, Luke. Thanks.
I think for us, it's alignment and being data-driven and data-conscious. I think we spent a lot of time doing a lot of decisions just based on gut checks rather than being fact-based and data-driven. Getting alignment with those metrics and with that data, sharing that with leadership, getting them to buy in, getting them to understand has really helped move things along. Personally, I'm wowed by what everyone else is doing here, and I'm taking a lot of this back with me to show them what the art of possible really is. So, but I think for us, really, it's been trying to just get that alignment with everybody to get them to understand what this digital frontier really has to offer to our brands, and how that can really translate to great conversion, great engagement with our shoppers and our consumers.
Yeah, I think for us, look, as much as we're all marketers and we love that, like, we're always the ones to come up with the best ideas, more often than not, we're not the ones to come up with the best ideas. The best ideas come from different sources of the organization or from customer feedback directly. So I think, you know, the easiest thing to do, honestly, is some of what you spoke to, just educating the people at your organization about what's possible and on some degree what's not possible. I can't send an email to Google and have them improve our organic search rankings, but I can give you insight into what people are clicking on within our owned assets. And honestly, like, who's the closest to the end consumer? For us, it's customer support in our call center. And the insights that we get from them on, you know, what's resonating with the end consumer and what questions the end consumer is having about how to use the product, how to get the most out of the product, that's where we get some of the best ideas for content. And so think about within your own org, who's actually closest to the consumer, who actually has the best insight. It's, you know, as much as we like to think it's us as marketers, it's oftentimes a very different part of the organization that has the most insight.
It's a valuable take. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
By the way, our only dude panel throughout the day, the only all-dude panel. We have a couple of minutes for questions. If anybody has any quick questions of the panel. I have a lightning round for you three. Since you guys raised it, what's the best insight that you got from your customers that you put into practice in the email channel?
Me specifically?
And all three of you, lightning round, all three of you. What's the best insight that you actually got from a customer about how to better use your email, or what not to do?
For me and for us, it's a really silly and stupid one, but it's send me stuff that's relevant. I actually saw someone post that on our Facebook page, saying, I don't have a child this age anymore. Please know us.
You should know this,
me.
right?
Yeah.
That's what they told you, is you should know us better than this, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, this has been some feedback we've got across the board. Is again, a lot of our target audiences are pretty senior level, you know, IT decision makers, and so we try to. You know, originally our content strategy was like really kind of more technical, and they were essentially like, hey, there's already a ton of content out there that does that. Like, the world does not need another white paper. So we kind of shifted away from that, and they said, what I'm really interested in is what's the point of view from my peers, right? And a lot of that is at Intel, like people that are actually working on the same projects they are, that are inside of Intel, but we also try to have a formula that's pretty much like Intel source and then a couple outside sources to reinforce the message. So that's been a valuable, you know, piece of feedback, was like, oh yeah, we have to kind of replicate what's already out there. And, you know, this audience wants, like, they're very technical, they want all the specs and feeds and speeds, and you know, they were like, yeah, we do, but that's like dime a dozen. So to differentiate us, we kind of moved into this idea of like focusing on our people over the products. So
I think for us, there's a macro trend that we have such a proliferation of SKUs available for the customer to purchase. It's somewhat overwhelming. And so specifically within the gaming vertical, we've started to double down and increase the available SKU count. And I think sometimes customers have come to us specifically spending like 30 minutes on the phone with our support agents, steering them towards the right product, which is great. We'd love to spend that amount of time. But we've made a significant investment in content assets to help the customer steer their own journey based upon, you know, are they interested in like VR gaming? Are they interested in first-person shooters? And so we've started to create very personalized and custom-catered content that really deals with all the different personas that we're having interaction with, specifically within gaming. And obviously, that can extend to other verticals, but that's where we've started to make a significant investment based on customer insight.
Rose, Kate, thanks very much.
Thanks, Rose.
John, you want to take it?
Guys, thank you. Well, first of all, quickly, what is this? What is this? I'm going to tell you quickly what this is. This is a bacon sponsorship. It is a sponsorship of food. One item that you can get anywhere, but here it's really good. And I'm going to tell you a quick background story on that. Soon you can sponsor. We had someone from a certain company come up to me and say, where's the bacon? This is like world-class maple flavored, you know, sprayed with heroin bacon. Why don't you have the bacon? Why do we only get it one time? And I said, well, day 3, we're trying to be healthy. And he said, well, look, by day 3, everyone's partied out. They need a break, or they need, you know, something to soak it up. I'd like to sponsor the bacon. Can we get the bacon back? And I said, okay, Adestra, bean solutions providers, the consummate solutions providers you are, they brought you the bacon today. So big round of applause. If you're a meat eater, there you go. Thank you for continuing to provide solutions for us, Henry and Lisa. Thank you. Okay, that's the plug on that. Stay tuned for your air and water sponsorships coming soon. Okay, now, as I said, the very first opening night, our sponsors make all this happen in so many ways. Putting all the pieces together, they all are important, and they all make this possible, these 3 days at an amazing resort like Stein Eriksen Lodge. I've got some new blood for us today. We've got a short presentation here from Ergo Interactive. I'd like to bring up John Hendricks, the CEO and founder of Ergo. He's going to lead us off here just for a few minutes with his team, Daniel Farrar, who heads up technology, and Nate Hilsinger, the director of product development. John, let's give him a big, he's not new to the conference, but he's new as a sponsor. So big round of applause to John, and take it away, my friend.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are almost at the finish line, and hopefully we won't get stranded here in the blizzard. We've spent a lot of time talking about personalization in all its different forms. What I've observed and heard is that there's mixed results. It ties up a lot of resources, and the jury seems to still be out, so much so that I heard one person even suggest that we go backwards to doing one-offs. And there is no going backwards, folks. It's the sensation of, you know, if you're wading into it, probably doing the doggy paddle in the middle of a big lake. That's not the way to get to the other side. It makes probably more sense to get, you know, into the boat to get to the other side and change the way we frame it. Personalization, I think, in its purest form, is usually 1 or 2 data points. You know, Dear John maybe points out the shoes that I bought that, you know, follows me around in my advertising. That's the proverbial doggy paddle. Individualization, on the other hand, is really the boat that you would get into. And it would tell me about the belt and the hat that goes with the shoes that I just bought, instead of just repeating that single message. A great way to think about individualization is to imagine reading your favorite magazine, and every page you turn and every issue that comes out, this thing just learns about you. It gets smarter, it adapts, and adjusts. That's exactly what we're doing in the email channel. So rather than getting caught up with, you know, many HTML files, many mail plans, a lot of triggering logic, and a lot of traditional marketing automation logic, what we're doing is one single HTML that talks to our platform and works very closely with Movable Ink, is integrated. So we are going to take you through this. My 2 colleagues here that you'll see have fabulous hairdos. Nate Helsinger heads up our product development, and Dan heads up our technology and data. They're going to come up and take us through this.
Good morning, everybody. Or, yeah, we're still morning, right? Yes. Has anyone looked outside at this crazy blizzard that's happening? We might be here for a while. We're going to extend this to 30-minute talk because there's nothing, we're not going to leave here, right? No, we're just going to do a few quick minutes. So Brian was here earlier having a really great conversation about the E&L newsletter that you see up here from American Express. And one of the questions, it's a question we get very often, is how the heck do you pull off a monthly newsletter with hundreds and hundreds of modules going to millions of people that is personalized at a one-to-one user level? So we're here to tell you a little bit about how we do that here. And we do that with a solution that we call MindReader. Ergo has created that here in-house, and it's got a pretty storied history, I guess you could say.
Yeah, MindReader is based off of 10.5 years of experience that Ergo has building out the most interesting and intelligent user journeys across the email channel.
So we break it down to these pretty simple work streams when it comes to these very personalized email programs at scale. And they're very simply plan, create, and analyze. Again, like Dan said, over our years of experience, these are the major buckets where we encounter the most issues with our clients that we've seen over the years. So let's talk about 3 specific issues that MindReader helps us solve and allows us to deploy those huge at-scale email campaigns. So we'll start with number 1, which is a very common theme, and that is targeting the right audience. First, just finding that audience. So we all have lots of data available to us about our audiences, and sometimes part of it's over here and part of it's over there, and oftentimes what we hear from marketers is, I'm waiting on a targeting file, I don't know how many people are in that targeting file yet, but any day now I'll be getting that targeting file, and then I can tell you a little bit more about my audience. What they really want to do, though, is have direct access to understand their audience and really deep dive into those audiences and do their own targeting and figure out who's available for this message.
All right, so one thing that we do within the platform is we integrate with your data. We understand we bring to you information about your audience. We allow you to do deep targeting and understand how big your populations are going to be that you're going to hit with a certain message at any particular time.
Yeah. So let's just do a real quick example. We're going to use the example of our fake client called Hardware Depot, America's largest fake hardware store. And John, that was for you. And so what we're going to do is go into our Audience Builder tool, which you can see right up here on the screen. And we're going to create a message for a holiday points audience. So Hardware Depot has a DIY points program. It's their loyalty program. We want to find people who are part of that program, who have purchased Christmas decorations in the past, and who have a low points balance, because we want to get them an offer in front of them, right? That is going to motivate them to respond to this message. Now, what we've found in the past with our clients is to do something like this, they've got to pick up the phone, call a few people, email a few people, and a few departments maybe are going to get this data together for them, and they'll figure out if there is an audience for this message. What MindReader does is it allows you to go right to that audience data with very minimal integration and find the audience for your message. So here what we're looking for are people who have purchased Christmas decorations in the past, who have point balances below 501 points, who have been sent an email from us in the last year, and who have opened in the last several months. So this is you sitting at a computer right now actually understanding the attributes of your audience and figuring out if there is a message that's going to match with this audience. You can imagine playing around with this for hours and deep diving into your audience and finding the people there for your messages. This is just completed its query, and it'll return back not only an audience count, but you could then export that for a targeting file or send that targeting file to your data department to pull those customers specifically for you. But the point is, we're getting you very quick and close access to your audience attributes. You can do your own targeting here in MindReader yourself. Cool. All right, number 2, individualization is hard to say and to do. It is, it's really hard. It's the struggle that we're all dealing with right now, especially at scale. And there are several things about it that are difficult from a process standpoint, from a review and approval standpoint, ad nauseum. What we like to do is we call this simplified complexity, because individualization is hard no matter what. So what MindReader does is it allows you to pull off these really complex, hyper-targeted campaigns all in this same system. So the same system where you're targeting your audience, you can now go and build content for those audiences. Now, if you're already a Movable Ink user or client, you are 50% of the way there to creating broad-scale campaigns with hyper-personalization included. MindReader is that extra part that you really need in order to pull that off at scale. What MindReader does is it allows you to create your content all in one place, to target all in one place, and seamlessly export that to Movable Ink. So you're not doing double entry, and it's basically a time saver. We've found that it shaves weeks off of a complex production process. Let's take a little tour real quick in the email details page here. The first thing I wanted to show you is that MindReader is aware of all of your targeting criteria. It pulls it in for you. So you can target and plan content right in the same tool, no longer doing this separately and no longer doing this manually. So as you can see here, we're pulling in your actual targeting files. I'm sorry, your actual targeting attributes. And then maybe we could just take a quick look at the rest of the email details page.
So what we include is all the pertinent information about your email, from subject lines to pre-headers to global details and messages that would be appearing across all of your messaging for all recipients.
All right, I just got the light. What it also does is, again, MindReader is combining your targeting, your audience attributes into one platform, allowing you to create what we did with the ENL for the American Express, which is create hundreds and hundreds of content modules per month, per week, per day, in a rational, sane system that is going to allow you to organize and classify that content with minimal user error. So here we're looking at how we can actually enter content into MindReader. It is all about classification and organization. So you classify your content, you actually put in the content itself, and you could upload images in there for Movable Ink. Those are directly exported right to Movable Ink, so you're not having to manually input that information in the Movable Ink platform. And number three, I know we're just about a minute left. Number three is, so we've done two things already. We have targeted an audience and deeply understood who is right for our message. Our second thing we've done is we've created our messaging and targeting all in the same tool. And then you're going to deploy that content, of course. MindReader is ESP agnostic. American Express happens to work with Salesforce for the ENL, and we have a really great partnership with them. MindReader talks to Salesforce just fine. The third thing we're going to do is, after deploying it, we're going to figure out how did we do. Getting results is not always the easiest thing. For many of us, top-line metrics are pretty easy to get to, but when you come to modular content like this, it can be really tough to just answer that simple question: how did my module do? How did my content do? MindReader puts it all in the same platform. In MindReader, you can go and now look at that content in terms of its performance. MindReader will tell you where it performed, who saw it, even down to the products that those people who saw it have purchased. It'll give you lots of beautiful analysis and feedback on how that specific content module did. Imagine if you're working in a multi-partner environment where lots of people are sending out through your email channel. Anyone can log on here and see how their content did at any time, which helps you really work with compliance a lot better and just kind of coordinating your campaigns a lot better. There's a lot to talk about with MindReader. We're super excited just to premiere it here at the conference. So we'll be out in the lobby if you guys want to talk to us about any piece of that. Dan, who's very talkative, will be out there, and hit us up out there. We've got lots more information for you. But I'll leave you with this. If you're already using Movable Ink, you should be using MindReader too. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, you guys. That was fantastic. I mean, it's always great to see, get a little look under the hood. So thank you very much. Great presentation. And I think you guys won a couple of EIS awards, I think 3, yes, from American Express and some other clients. So great work and great job. Thank you. And as Nate said, we're going to roll right into a coffee break right now, also sponsored by Ergo.
no one can tell their worlds apart. We'll live, we'll die, just take the ride.
We were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Yeah, the bonnie boat was one as we sail into the mystic. I can now hear the sailors cry, smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. And where that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And magnificently we will fold into the mystic. When that foghorn blows, you know I will be coming home. Yeah, when that foghorn whistle blows, I gotta hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And together we will fold into the mystic. Come on, girl.
the joke of the neighborhood. Why should you care if you're feeling good? We'll take the long way home. Take the long way home. There are times that you feel you're part of the scenery. All the greenery is coming down, boy. And then your wife seems to think you're part of the furniture. Oh, it's peculiar. She used to be so nice. When lonely days turn to lonely nights, you take a trip to the city lights and take the long way home. Take the long way home. You never see what you wanna see. Forever playing to the gallery. You take the long way home. Take the long way home. When you're up on the stage, it's so unbelievable, unforgettable. How they adore you. But then your wife seems to think you're losing your sanity. Oh, calamity. Oh, is there no way out? Oh, yeah. Does it feel that your life's become a catastrophe? Oh, it has to be for you to go, boy. When you look through the years and see what you could have been, oh, what you might have been, if you had had more time. So when the day comes to settle down, well, who's to blame if you're not around? You took the long way home. You took the long way home. You took the long way home. You again. You took the long way home. You took the long way home. So long. You took the long way home. You took the long way home. Ooh, yeah. You took the long way home. Long way home, long way home, long way home, long way home, long way home,
If you could all come back in and take your seats, we're going to have our final session and then our final set of roundtables.
Gothic flavor, how I miss you. If I only once could kiss you, I'd be happy for one moment of my lifetime. I'd be there. And the water running over me is growing ever colder. Make me happy for one moment.
All right, everybody, if you could grab your seat, we are going to wrap with, I think, wrap appropriately with the larger issue of customer experience, which is actually a theme that I'm contemplating for the next Email Insider Summit. I've always liked the idea of taking email and contextualizing it within this larger customer journey, and especially the larger customer experience, because, and to get talking about email in a silo, but really start talking about how email is being coordinated with a lot of other, not only messaging pieces, but also advertising pieces, retargeting, to get a better sense as marketers start to think more about what is that holistic consumer experience that they're building. So I was happy to talk to our Amanda Scarnecchia, who's the manager of CRM and consumer data at the Scotts Miracle-Gro company, because this is one of her passions, is talking about that broader customer experience. I want to welcome Amanda to give our final presentation and help wrap this up with that larger holistic sense of how does email fit within the larger customer experience. Amanda, come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Amanda Scarnecchia. I'm from Scotts Miracle-Gro, and this is very fitting for wrapping up the conference. So we've talked so much about email. We've talked about measurement. We've talked about content, personalization. But what I want to talk about is taking a step back and understanding how email fits into that larger omni-channel consumer journey. So how do we get better at connecting the dots? So a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today is some of the initiatives that Scotts Miracle-Gro is doing coming up into this next year to help create a more cohesive omni-channel experience for our customers. Just to give a little bit of background about Scotts Miracle-Gro, so it's not just Scotts, it's not just Miracle-Gro, we support 6 different brands. So Scotts Miracle-Gro, Ortho, Roundup, Tomcat, and we also have Bonnie Plants. And this is going to play a key part in kind of further down in the presentation. Also, we just started doing direct-to-consumer a couple years ago. But the majority of our sales and our revenue that we bring in is through our big 3 retailers, so Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart. Let's start by talking a little bit about me. So I've only been with Scotts for 4 months now, and I've only been in email marketing for about 3 years, so I'm a newbie. I actually have a background in product design. I worked in that field for quite a while. I'm an Ohio State alumni, go Bucks, woo! I do have this really awesome dog named Tucker. I miss him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him when I go back. I love NASA, so I've always wanted to work for them. My favorite movie is October Sky. And one thing I love about email is emojis and using them appropriately and in the right context. So here's the thing. Consumers ingest thousands of pieces of content every single day, every single hour, all different channels. So the problem is, how do we break through that thousands of pieces of content that people are digging through every single day? So that's a challenge that all of us as brands are facing. How do we get consumers to engage with us, our brand? And a key part of that is multi-touch experience, making sure we're continuously touching the consumer across different channels at different touch points. So how do we do that? How do we get consumers to engage with our brand? How do we get them to convert? So we have to take a step back and understand, what do we want our consumers to do? They want us to tell them what they need in order to do what they need to get to the end of the funnel. So in this funnel, there's multiple touch points to actually get to the bottom. So where does it start? People need to be aware of the brand. And then further down the line, they need to engage with the brand. Engage with the brand through email, opening an email, going onto a website, doing some research. And ultimately, we want them to make a purchase. And it doesn't stop there. Post-purchase, what's the next step? So after making a purchase, we want our consumers to advocate for us. We want them to share positive reviews about the products. We want them to not only be repeat customers, but also loyal customers. Come back and use our products year after year. So how do we get them to the bottom of the funnel? So 3 very simple tips. Deliver personalized content in the channels preferred. So what does this mean? We've talked about personalization this entire conference, and it's very specific to every single brand. So for us at Scott's Miracle-Gro, the way that we understand personalized content, we actually look at our individual brands and the audience of each individual brand. So I will tell you, of our 6 brands, they're a completely different audience. I'll give an example. For our Miracle-Gro audience, it's more gardeners, and really the channel that they like to engage with us in is our social channels. They love to find inspiration for their gardening projects on our Instagram, on our Pinterest, and so we deliver that content in that channel because that's what they preferred. That's what that audience wants. Another example of personalizing content, so when we work with our large retailers, Lowe's, Home Depot, we look to see when our Scott's products are on sale throughout the year, and then I go and I align our content for mobile as well as email for those sales. So we're not allowed to promote Home Depot sales and Lowe's sales within our own personal Scott's emails, but what I can do is make sure that we are talking about seeding, we're talking about fertilizing at the exact same time that Lowe's is having a sale on seed or fertilizer. That way, when our consumers are going to make a purchase in store, they recall the email they received about us talking about seeding and fertilizing. This is the time to do it, and it's more likely to get them to convert and make a purchase in store. I talked about this already. I'm going to continue to reiterate it. Multiple touch points throughout the consumer journey. It's very important in order to get through that giant block of content that consumers are engaging with every single day. One thing to mention about this, though, although we want to continue to engage with our customers along different channels, we have to remember there has to be a cadence. If you do it too often, you send too many emails, you send too many push notifications, you could potentially lose a subscriber. They unsubscribe and you're not able to market to them again. And it really depends on the brand, what that cadence is. I know for Scott's, we don't send messages every single day. That would turn our customers off. So finding the appropriate cadence that works for your brand is really important in delivering these multiple touch points. And then creating a seamless experience. So part of this, like Steve mentioned, breaking down the silos of all the different channels. You need to be able to work with other teams, communicate with your web team, communicate with your social team, and even beyond that, communicating. I know that there was mention of talking about your customer call center, making sure that they're aware of what communications are going out, especially for email. So when you're sending a big email blast out, part of our process at Scott's is to make sure our consumer call center is aware of what we're sending. They actually are in the review process, and then when it goes out, they're able to respond to customers that call in that might be confused and be able to answer their questions. Another big thing is making sure your technical team is included. So back-end web developers, knowing when we're sending an email out so the website doesn't crash. So that process of having a seamless user experience, you go to open an email, you go to the website, it's not crashing, it's still there, or even mobile app. We've crashed our mobile apps before, sending too many people there to download the app. That's a problem. So making sure all the teams are aware of what's going on, especially with email and how email can actually impact the different channels to create that seamless user experience across channels. So I'm actually going to dig a little deeper into those 3 specific tips and how we're going about doing this at Scott's. So I talked about delivering personalized content. What we do is understand our audience, and we use personas. I'm actually going to walk through an example. We've got Robert here, and you can see he's a new homeowner, but he's got a lot of weeds in his grass. He's never tended to a lawn before, but he's in this nice suburban area, and he really wants to have the best lawn on the block. He has no idea how to do it. He's never done this before. So he's unfamiliar with the tools he needs, but he wants something that's quick and easy. He's a busy guy. He wants a do-it-yourself thing, but he wants it quick and easy. So what's the first step that most people go through when they want to try something new? They do their research. They go to the web. They go to Google. Sometimes they go to YouTube if they're Generation Z. So this is what Robert did. He went on the website, he did some Google searching, and he came across the Scott's website. From there, he did a little bit of research, a little bit of digging to try to find what he was looking for to have that best lawn. While he was on the website, he noticed he's able to actually download our My Lawn app. And with the download of the My Lawn app, he's actually able to get a personalized bundle, a personalized experience of how to go about for his particular lawn. So it asks some survey questions of how large is your lawn size? What is the color of the grass? How many weeds do you have in your lawn? All of those different things. So he enters in his information, and now he's able to kind of have a personalized plan of how to go about approaching getting the best lawn on the block. One cool thing about him downloading the app, that was also a source of email acquisition. So we now have his email on file. So next step, a couple days later, he's casually browsing on Facebook, and he gets served an ad of one of the products that he looked at while he was on the Scott's website. He clicks the link, he goes back to the website, does a little bit more digging. He also puts something in his cart. He thinks, this sounds great. I think I'm ready to pull the trigger. Not sure. Doorbell rings, pizza delivery guy shows up. He kind of just abandons his web browser session, kind of forgets about it, he's starving, and leaves it at that. Next step, so he had abandoned his web session, but he had left an item in his cart. So we trigger, an hour later, an abandoned cart email, which says, hey, you left this in the cart. Are you still interested? He's really still not sure. As he's new to this, he's not sure if he's ready to make a purchase. So what he decides he's going to do, he's going to go to Lowe's the next day and go in store and actually check out the product. And then he's going to compare that product to other products that are right beside it and see really is that what he wants to purchase. He gets into Lowe's. He has the mobile app downloaded. He gets a triggered push notification that says, hey, you're in a Lowe's. We've got 20% off coupon for you today. And then it also triggers a reminder message that, hey, it's also the good time to actually fertilize your lawn. Pick up your Scott's product. From there, he's thinking, oh, I'm in the store, and now I actually have a coupon. I think I'm ready to make the purchase. So actually being able to deliver that content at the point of purchase is really key to getting Robert to convert. So he makes the purchase in store. Now that he's made the purchase, what's next? We always have to consider what's the post-purchase journey that we put our consumers through. We want to build loyalty. We don't want them to just buy that one bag of fertilizer. We want them to also buy seed. We want them to come back next season and buy again. So how do we go about building that seamless user experience after they make a purchase? So in email specifically, we do follow up with content of the product that they did purchase, if they purchased direct to consumer, and how to use the product. So sometimes it's confusing, especially if you're new to using our products. You may not know how to use them. So giving some best tips of how to apply, when to apply, all of that is included in those types of triggered email messages. Something we're not doing right now, but we want to get to, is recommending other products that could be fitting with what had already been purchased. So you bought a bag of fertilizer, well, you probably need some seed too, or maybe you need some patch, so you have some patches in your lawn. So adding those types of products and recommending them as, hey, this is a great idea, you should add this to your cart as well. I talked about this already, call center, making sure that they are aware of all the products. On our campus, we have a lot of research and development. They have backgrounds in PhDs. They have actually trained all of our call center folks who answer the phone so that they are aware of how these products work, and they are able to answer any questions that come in from our call center. And finally, we want consumers to advocate for our brand. So how do we do that? Well, we ask them to hopefully write a positive review, but we want them to really advocate for us. We want them to tell us about tell their friends about us. We want their friends to purchase our products. So really getting to the point where they're dedicated, they're loyal consumers, and they are actually advocating for us now. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into how we are personalizing our journeys at Scott's. And just to take it back a little bit, a lot of these things are on our roadmap for next year. Some of the stuff we have actually started, and some of the stuff we're in progress, but we're not quite there. So hopefully I can report back on it next year. So first thing, what's important about going and tracking across journeys, you have to have analytics. And that's always been an issue for understanding like cross-channel behavior for consumers. So what we do is we actually use Adobe Analytics, and all of our analytics are all in one place. So our web analytics data, our email analytics data, mobile app, as well as social, all feeds into one place. Now, where there's a little bit of a disconnect is, okay, they're all in one place, but are they talking to each other? So what we're doing, we're actually implementing, it's called an MD5 hash ID. And really what this is it's kind of like a unique identifier to identify a consumer across different channels with this just one, it's kind of just has characters in it, and basically be able to see what the behavior the consumer is doing across all of the different channels. So in order to implement this hash ID, you have to really integrate it with all of your different channels. Right now we have it integrated with email. We have it integrated into our web. But there are places it's not integrated. It's not integrated in our social channels. It's also not yet at the point of email acquisition. It's not integrated there as well. So that's something we're working on, getting it integrated into all of those places. So especially at the beginning, email acquisition. So that when we go into Adobe and we're looking to see the consumer behaviors, where people are dropping off, where people are converting, we're able to connect the dots by looking at that hash ID across the different channels. Geofencing in the app. So the MyLawn app, we have not started this. We're going to be starting beta testing for this early January. So again, we're working with Adobe for this. So in our app, essentially I talked about this in our example with Robert, when a consumer enters a Lowe's or Home Depot store and they have their app downloaded on their phone, they actually get triggered messages which will either give them a coupon of whatever the store is, 20% off, general coupon, but also a marketing reminder of this is the time to seed your lawn, this is the time to fertilize your lawn, pick up your bag of Scott's products. Or if there happens to be a sale on a Scott's product in the store, getting that push notification while they're in that store. It is highly effective in creating more conversions at the point of purchase. So that's something that's on our roadmap. We haven't done yet, but we're going to, and we're really excited about. So we're talking about cross-channel experiences. It's not always just digital. We're going to bring back direct mail. So how are we using direct mail? We actually have a very specific use case for it where we have a product, a Scott's products, and it's a 4-bag bundle of fertilizer. It's at about the $100 price point. You actually can only purchase it direct to consumer. But what's really neat about it is when somebody goes there to our website, they're looking at the product, they're kind of trying to decide whether they want to purchase it or not. They may even put it in their cart, but we don't have an email address on file for them. We can't retarget them with an abandoned cart email. How do we recapture them without retargeting with ads? So we can do the ad placement, but we wanted to try something different. We wanted to try retargeting through direct mail. So how are we going to go about doing this? Basically, with the direct mail, how it works is it's kind of this, they're able to see the IP address of the user that we don't have an email address for that's most likely to convert. They may have visited multiple pages on the website. They might have actually added the item to their cart. And essentially, within 2 to 3 days, we'd be able to retarget them at their mailing address. So it's kind of like a reverse append to that IP address that we can see on file, and send them a piece of direct mail to give them a little bit more information about the product bundle and what they're going to get with it. We've considered doing a postcard. We've also considered doing even more of a brochure thing, just depending on like the product. And one thing that our Scott's consumers, we know about them is they love to get information. They love the educational piece of what we provide them. So sending them a brochure of how the products work and what they're getting out of the bundle, we think that'll really help to drive conversion rates. It's said that like between 3 to 7 times the revenue is brought in when using this method of direct mail. So we're going to try it. We're going to try it early next year. We haven't done it yet, but we're really excited about trying something different and kind of going off of the digital path. And last, granular segmentation. So we talked a little bit about this. Well, you don't want to get too granular. Sometimes the big blasts are sometimes good. They work really well for some brands. And they work well for us too. But we're going to try something new, something we're really excited about, and it's very specific to Scott's. So we're a company, everything that we do is based on weather. So we're a seasonal company, and the weather in Florida is not the same as in the Pacific Northwest. It's not the same in Massachusetts. Even the products used are not the same. So what we want to start doing is triggering messages based off of weather. We are already doing this in our mobile app. So in the My Lawn app, and it's all based on zip code. So at your zip code, we have an integration with a Weather API app, or with the Weather API. And in the app, by zip code, we're able to understand whether or not there's been precipitation, what the percentage of precipitation is for that day, for that week, and actually set a push notification that says, hey, you've had 0% chance of rain over the past week. You need to water your lawn. And it actually gives it how much you need to water your lawn. You need to water it about 1 inch because you've had no rain this past week. So sending those reminders to make sure that people are watering their lawn. So we're already doing that in the app, but we want to take it to the next level and bring it into email. One thing that's really cool is, so there's these weather phenomenons that happen every single year. People experience dandelions in their yard. They experience crabgrass. And the things about that is there are very specific weather conditions that occur in order for those to pop up in your grass. They happen at the same time every year. So what we want to do, and again, the weather patterns are different in Florida versus in the north. We want to be able to, instead of doing the manual process of sending an email to people in Florida in February about crabgrass, and then in the north in April, the same message, it's very manual, it takes a lot of work, being able to do behavioral triggers based on the weather. So when these weather conditions, these weather patterns happen that are likely for dandelions or crabgrass to come out, sending them a message to say, hey, it's coming. Dandelions are coming in your yard. It's that time of year. It's time to go pick up a bag of X product to help combat the issue. So that's our next step. And we're really just going to start by testing a few different things. So like I mentioned, dandelions, crabgrass. It's kind of the first phase this upcoming season. And then if it works really well, it makes sense for us to expand that across our entire business, because everything we do is seasonal and everything we do is weather dependent. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. We have time for a couple of quick questions. Come back. Oh, a few of you. Okay, one in back and then you.
Great presentation. This is Monica from Just Fab. So you have a lot of multi-touch points across several channels, and you mentioned behavioral triggers. How are you ensuring that you're putting the most relevant messages to the customer with all these different behavioral triggers? How are you prioritizing over your batch and blast, over transactional emails that can, in totality, can inundate the inbox?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for us specifically, we also do have 6 different brands, and some of the brands, some people might be on multiple lists. So again, we don't want to send them too many messages. One really cool thing about Scott's is we have a lot of R&D people that give us information of when's the right time to send them this information. And we've looked at past data too. So this past year, we've had some emails that have gone out. We only sent 1 blast. That was it. Hugely successful, but we didn't send anything else. This year, we've really changed our plans to see what was successful last year and either expanding upon it this year, sending more messages of what was working well, or really taking a part of what was not working well. And I know we talked about this at another session, but our company has these overarching high strategies that kind of span across all of our brands. And ultimately, we go back to those strategies. And some of them are tactical, where it's like we want people to buy fertilizer more frequently. Or some of them are more, we want our customers to start a project with us. So based on those strategies, and we have 17 going into next year, everything we do across all of our channels, we look back to make sure we're delivering on those strategies. And if it's something that seems like, oh, it's kind of frivolous, or it's a product that's really not going to drive the needle or follow with those strategies, we actually cut it out of the plan. It's not something we do. So we want to make sure we are delivering exactly what the consumers need in the channel that they want, and it's really based on our strategies of what makes sense. So we do kind of eliminate that clutter by basing everything we do off of those high-level strategies.
Hi, nice job. Can you tell me who you're using for your web, your email, your direct mail to web test, or not test, that you've rolled out, and how you're seeing, what kind of lift you're seeing from it?
The direct mail piece?
The direct mail piece.
So we are still in progress with that. We are working with incremental media, and essentially what they do is they place a pixel on the website, and they're the ones that actually do the hard work where they look at the data, and we don't just send mail to every single person that we don't have an email address on for. They have data scientists that actually analyze the information coming in, and it's the people that are doing multiple things on the website. Those are the ones that are most likely to convert. So it might be maybe 40% of the people that are on our site, and they're the ones that, on the back end, they actually are the ones that kind of, they're able to see the IP address, and they're able to kind of backtrack and append that IP address with a mailing address that they have in their system. And everything just kind of goes through them. And they trigger the postcard at the time, and our consumers will get the postcard within 2 to 3 days.
Is ideally the app where you really want them to be, is that the place where you're really having the highest level of engagement, interaction? And I'm curious about how successful you've been in getting people to adopt the app, and when they're not adopting the app, do you sort of have fallback models for how you'll use these other channels to sort of replicate the experience?
That's a great question, because not everybody wants to have the Scott's app. So one thing is we really focus on the start of the season. We drive the app at the beginning of the season, because the sooner you get started, right when spring gets started, your lawn will be in a lot better shape through the rest of the year. So we really do a lot of pushing of the app. We actually are doing pushing of the app through paid ads. So that's actually starting to run right now, and it's going to really ramp up in January. And it's really key to get people on the app early on in the season. So we're pushing that through ads. We are actually pushing it through email. It's not kind of it's usually in our newsletter, so it's not the primary spot where we talk about downloading the app. But one thing we do is we know who the people are that already have the app. So in our email messages, we use dynamic segmentation to kind of remove that widget of the mobile app for people who already have the app. So we're not giving them useless content that they already have.
Are you using the paid channel to remind people, to even current app users, are you using the paid media channel to remind them they have the app? Because recidivism is the big challenge for mobile apps. You have it, but you forget it, and then you eventually delete it.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because again, we're a seasonal business. We're off season right now. Nobody's using the app. There's not a lot you can do. There's some content in there. But ultimately, you don't start using the app till probably February, kind of in the southern areas. So that is part of the strategies is to remind the current app users. So we'll actually just segment our emails out to just app users and remind them like, hey, it's the start of the season. Don't forget to reactivate your app. Here's some of the new features coming out. So really just getting them excited about, well, you have everything that you've done last year, but these are the new things that you can do in the app this year. So reminding them that at the beginning of the season to kind of get them re-engaged, and they might have forgotten, like you said, because it's been a whole season that they had used it.
So go ahead. Let's do one last.
So you touched, Luke from Intel, you touched a little bit on your messaging about, kind of using the hook of, hey, like your neighbor's yard looks really good, so make sure to up your game. And I can totally sympathize with that because my neighbor is kind of like that. How, in terms of just like your messaging and your content that goes out, like how much do you use like that kind of like MB to kind of really push people into taking action?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And again, it kind of goes back to looking at our personas and looking at our audience. We know a lot about our Scott's audience, and a lot of those folks are actually in suburban areas. It's usually males within the 50 to 65 age range. So we know a lot about them. And we know that they're in these nice suburban neighborhoods, and that's usually what they want. They want to have the best lawn. They're the ones buying our products. And Scott's is a premium product. Our products are a little bit more expensive than other products, other fertilizers out there. And so the people that are using our products, they are the ones that do want the best lawn on the block. It actually is kind of a competition. They want to have the coolest lawn. They want to be the coolest neighbor. So that is a tactic that we do use, and it just works for that audience.
Amanda's going to be leading the roundtable on this very topic, so you can ask more questions there. Amanda, great. That was wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
We are going to switch over to our final set of roundtables. The first one is Better Tech, Better Marketers with Kate. Where do we have that one, guys? Help me out. Right back here? Right back by John, by the AV table. Customer Experience across channels, and that will be with Amanda. Right over here in the front. And finally, is multimedia email working? And that's going to be with Holly Gross from Whole Foods. Where will that one be? Right over here in the front. So grab a round table. Safe travels, everybody, and thanks again for all your help.